I don't know if it's that or just the switch to past tense, but it was more challenging for me to write this book than my other ones.
Yeah, I think with every book you learn how to write a book. So my early YAs were a lot more serious. They were about very serious things, and then they've gotten sort of progressively more ridiculous. And now I'm taking it, because I was always a huge mystery buff. I always wanted to write a mystery, and my whole life, and I'm finally writing a mystery now. But it's also slightly ridiculous, but it's also, people who've read Names of the Star are like, whoa, it's also way darker and scary, but also weird. I know, well, you just start incorporating more and more stuff that you learn how to do. Yeah, you kind of, I think every book changes you, because you learn how to do something new.
Next question. Wow, let's get right in there. The question was, what are our worst fears as writers? You want to start?
Going outdoors.
There's so many. I don't know. I think for me, it's obviously the perception of the book. What are people going to say? Does this suck? Is this any good? Are other people going to relate? Is someone going to read it? What you hope for as a reader, as a writer, is that somebody reads it and says, yes, you know, either I love that story, or she totally got it, or I want to read more by her. That's kind of what you hope for. So when people say the opposite, that those are kind of worst fears for me.
I feel like you have to ignore the fears, because writing a book is already kind of a ridiculous activity. Like, my job is to sit and make crap up, give it to other people, and which is already dumb. So you have to kind of get over your fear that they won't like it, they'll hate me, this is terrible, I will never finish this. Like, you will finish it. You know, you can't worry about other people's reactions to it. You do the best that you can at any given time. You just have to never lose the courage to keep doing it, and just get over it. You know, you can spend a lot of time worrying, and so you just have to go, well, I have no time to worry. I have to write every day, so I'm just taking worrying and fear off the schedule.
I think that's very true. And Vicky, like, in terms of your fears, for me, the other one is I'm not going to be able to finish the story. The story isn't going to work. And you can control. You have no say over other people's reactions, but you can finish the book. You just have to get your butt in the chair and finish the book. That is in your control. So I think you should. You have to kind of focus on that one.
A lot of people ask, how do you finish a book? I'm like, well, you finish a book by finishing a book. Like, you literally just sit down and finish it. Even if you hate it and you think it's broken and terrible and it's no good, you still have to finish it. You can always go back and fix it. But
that's the trick to getting published. Are there any aspiring writers here? I'm always yeah. So yeah, the trick is finish the book. You don't write 2 chapters and then start worrying about how to sell it. Just finish the book and then worry about everything later.
Yeah, that's the main key, and you finish simply by doing it. Genuinely, you sit down. There's a lot of sitting.
Yes, a lot of sitting. Way too much sitting, which is why Maureen is standing now.
I'm sort of doing this. No, but you're right. Now you reminded me how much I was enjoying standing. It's fun.
Next question. Yes.
With you having written for both YA and adult, is there one that comes easier for you? And have you ever considered writing an adult book?
YA is a bit easier because it's shorter, so it takes less time to complete, but they're both, for me, the voice is pretty much the same. I found them both a lot of fun to do. I always wanted to write YA, but I fell into adult stuff because I was looking for a publisher, and they were desperate for chick-lit type books at the time. I think Bridget Jones was really hot, and I always wanted to write. I always wanted to write YA, but I heard them talk. I used to work at Harlequin Romances, and they were publishing a line of books called Red Dress Inc. I don't know if anyone's heard of them. And they said, well, yes, we want chick-lit writers, but all of our writers are 85. Where are we going to find young writers to write about dating and life? And I was down the hall, and I thought, I want to do that. So I just forced myself to write the book, and I just every night and during work hours I would just write. So I thought, this is my opportunity to get in, and when you see an opening, you have to take it. And I just wrote Milk Round, my first book, and then as soon as I sold it and got an agent, I decided I always wanted to write YA. I'm going to go back and do that, and I started working on Bras and Broomsticks. So for me, I love them both, but YA was where my heart was.
I've been working on an adult book for a long time that I just haven't had time to finish. But
I should know that.
Yeah, it's around 3 years. But I mean, YA, the process is sort of exactly the same, except the protagonists are younger age. So you know, I never really kind of think about it as that different of an activity. It's just, you know, sort of who would probably, where it's going to be put on a shelf is sort of the biggest difference. So, yeah, I don't really, I sort of throw it all together in my mind, except that YA is probably more awesome because there's more readers and more activity and like more people like you guys. I mean, adult readers are great, but I think adult readers are sort of set, whereas YA readers read more and they'll take a chance with other stuff. Like, you know, I feel like some adult readers are like, I only read books about submarines. Submarines, specifically red ones. Like, they're very, very niche. Whereas YA readers will be like, I like Scott Westerfeld, and oh, that means I will try. Well, I'm in the store, I'm going to try. And they'll try something totally not, you know, something else. And then, you know, they're just much more widely read and much more enthusiastic. And you actually know how the internet works. So, you can then go online and talk or find out about other authors and things like that. And so I think it's just more exciting.
Man, you guys really look like weavers.
I know you get that, but don't. Every time I turn around, I'm like, please, please, please.
Where do you get your inspiration from?
Well, usually, I kind of make things up. It's a lot of wish fulfillment for me. Like, they give me a call. Like, I don't have a magic cell phone. There's a girl who can call herself in the past. And I had never had a magic cell phone where I could call myself in the past, unfortunately. And my sister is not really a witch either. But actually, this book, 10 Things, is definitely inspired by a real-life premise. Because when I was 17, well, when I was 15, my mom moved to Connecticut. I lived in Montreal. When I was 15, my mom moved to Connecticut with my sister. And then when I was 17, my dad told me that he was moving to Toronto, which is like 5 hours away from where I lived, and he wanted me to come with him and my stepmom. And I did not want to go at all. I loved my high school, I loved my friends, and I loved my boyfriend. I said, I'm not going, there's no way. Can I move in with my friend Maureen and her mom? And I don't know why, but my dad said, okay. Yeah, it was crazy. And he got me a car, and gave me a credit card, and I had a budget, and I moved into my friend's basement. Except my friend, her mom, actually lived in LA. She didn't really live with us in Montreal. Her partner was in LA, so she kind of went out and didn't come back. And my friend's older sister, who was supposed to be living with us too, did not want to live with two 17-year-olds. Understandably, so she moved out. So it was just the two of us in her house with my car and my credit card. And it was a bit crazy. So I remember telling my editor about that. I think I was telling Maureen for some reason. You were at the beginning of this.
I was so stunned when I told you the story. I was genuinely distressed because I was never allowed to do anything. Like, I lived the opposite of that, and I was tell me again about it.
I remember we were sitting writing one day, and I remember telling them this idea, and they said, you should write about that. And I mentioned it to my editor, and she said, yes, I want to hear about that. But then my editor, when I told her the idea, she said, I want you to write about the craziness that happens when you live with your friend and you're in high school, but I also want you to talk about the flip side, like what it feels like when your parents basically abandon you to go live somewhere else and follow their own lives. So while this book is over the top, it's a lot more serious than my other books, because I kind of talk about there's a lot of, they deal with sexuality and they deal a lot with and what it feels like when your parents move away.
Yeah, I feel like ideas just come sort of from life, and you just sort of snatch different little pieces of things. It could be something very mundane, just like, you know, I used to write a lot of stories when I had a lot of boring jobs, and that was a lot of, you know, stuff I'd either imagine or little details I would borrow from friends or things I'd see. And as, you know, life went on and more ridiculous things would happen. 13 Little Envelopes began because I won a fellowship to go to Scotland and write in a castle for a month, which sounded like a dream come true because they sent me the letter late. Like, Lord and Lady so-and-so forgot to put it in the mail or something, and I'd applied as a joke because I never thought they'd give it to me. It was this really fancy-sounding fellowship, and I wrote this whole letter because in the time I lived in New York, and an ice cream truck I lived next to a school, and there was this ice cream truck that used to go past my house every 10 minutes, and it would play, and it went all day long through my head, and I was like, I can't. So I wrote this crazy letter like, dear Lord, I think so much of this and ice cream truck outside my house. Please don't come to your parents. Quiet, so fast. And I'm like, well, they're going to burn this letter. They're like, hello, we're calling. We forgot to send you a letter. We can't be here in 6 days. Like, of course course I can. I'll be there. And I had to buy a ticket and go to Scotland, and I brought a huge suitcase, and I ended up in this castle in the middle of the woods with 4 other people I'd never met before, and you weren't allowed to talk during the day, and we had no TV and no internet, and literally the only thing we would have for entertainment at night was reading A.S. Byatt to each other, which, if you know the author A.S. Byatt, is like not the most fun thing you can possibly do in an evening. And, or read poetry in Latin. Like, that was another fun activity. One night we just talked about oatmeal. I mean, it was crazy. And one guy was like a big strapping guy, and he worked for the BBC, and he always wore a flak jacket, and every morning he would go, he's like, I need an axe. And every morning he would go out with his axe for an hour. Like, he just went a little mental. It was like The Shining. And it was winter, and it would get dark at 3, and the first night there I got locked in the, it's all really happened. I got locked in they were using this sort of jail tower as the library, and the cook didn't know I was in there looking at books, and she locked me in. And it had a door from the 17th century that was that thick, and I was like, no! There was no heat in there, and they're like, oh yeah, many people have died in there. That was night number 4. And I was stuck with nothing. It was sort of, because the whole thing about 13 Little Llamas is she has no connection, and she has no cell phone, and she has no journals, and she has no anything. And I was literally in this castle going, I've never been this quiet before, and it's sort of making me crazy. And that's sort of what it came out of. And other things are much more mundane. I think you can go online.
You basically just take something that you feel or emotion or something that happened, twist it into something totally unrecognizable and entertaining.
Like Taffy at the end. I made you a balloon animal. It's a giraffe now. Other questions? Hopefully so. Yes.
How many rejection letters did you get before you got an agent? And do you have any completed books that you just haven't been able to sell at all, if you wrote something and
my experience is a little bit different because I got a job in a publishing house when I graduated from college, and I wrote Milk Run while I was working there, and I sent a few chapters, and they encouraged me. I sold my first book. I had tons of short stories that I'd written before, and I sent to literary magazines across the country, and I think one was published, and the rest were not. So I have tons of those. I have many, many very dark and depressing short stories that have not come to light of day, and I'm glad they haven't. But when my first book was published, and I found out right away, and then once that happened, now I basically sell on outlines. I have a lot of concepts and outlines that have not sold, but I haven't written a full manuscript that hasn't sold. So I'm lucky like that. And I found my agent once I sold my first 3 books. Then I had Harlequin wanted to give me another contract, and I said, I think it's time for me to get an agent, because I was basically giving them my books for free, pretty much, because I didn't have an agent, and I didn't know, and I had a credit card debt of $5,000 Canadian, which is like
$20.
Yeah, 23 had a $5,000 credit card debt, and when they offered me my first contract, I was like, it was not much, it was like $7,000 for my first book, and I was like, yes! American dollars, that's like $7 million. I could have been. And I was just so excited that I paid off my credit card and bought a few pair of shoes. And that was pretty much my first book.
So touching when you hear stories like this from Canada. Very moving.
For the record, though, Canadian dollars right now, I think are worth more than
everything's worth more than American dollars right now, including cork and old shoes, things like that. Everyone loves a currency joke. Currency conversion joke. What was the question again? I know I have an answer.
Oh, about
rejections? I also have a weird story. I went to college with my friend Kate, and she got a job in publishing, and I went to writing school, and I was writing all alone, writing all these stories, and having her look at them, because she was coming up with a big agency. And what I didn't know is that she was secretly passing what was essentially my homework to a bunch of very powerful agents. And they were reading it, and they were sort of watching me, and I had no knowledge of this. And then that's sort of how I got my first book deal, which is totally weird. So I don't have a rejection story largely because I have a weird MS